On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2014. We're going to be taking a look at Sohyang, and she's going to be performing Bridge Over Troubled Water. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So just to let you guys know, I am going to be stopping this performance and jumping into it about halfway through. So if you want to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it, there's going to be a link in the description below that you guys can click on, and I highly advise you do that because if you haven't seen this performance before, you need to watch it the whole way through uninterrupted. And I'm just going to edit this bit into the video because by clicking on that link in the description is the only way that you're going to be able to see the video, because my video has just been blocked. I'll also put a link to the performance video at the top of the comments as well and pin it there. So click on that link, watch the performance, and then come back here for the analysis, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. I'm just going to jump in here. This one is really difficult to jump into, and we have watched most of the performance. We will watch the rest of it at the end of this video, but you have to strap yourself in for this one because the vocal technique on show here is off the charts. And I am going to rewind the video, just point out a few things about Sohyang and her voice and just the technique that's involved, because it'll all fly under the radar. Even if you do sing yourself, just getting to anywhere close to this technique can be, and probably will be, a lifelong mission, because very few people ever get to this point with their vocal cords. Before we get into the analysis, just a mention about the composition. And this song by Paul Simon, who has a video on the channel here somewhere if you want to check him out independently. But what a songwriter, what a composition as a whole. The journey that you go on throughout this song from beginning to end is interesting the whole time. When you add in a vocalist of this quality, it just really takes it to another level. Also the fact that Sohyang is from South Korea, but perfect diction here, pronunciation, enunciation as well. Just to fill in the background on this performance as well, it was for a TV show, and I think it was a talent show kind of thing, and it was a Michael Bolton special version of it. Like, I guess you have themed weeks maybe, and this was Michael Bolton's week, who was there and saw this performance, and then he asked Sohyang to accompany him on tour because he was so impressed. In fact, Michael Bolton referred to her as a virtuoso, and it's something that you don't really hear paired with vocalists, but sometimes instrumentalists being a virtuoso on that instrument. But in this case, it is a spot-on description, because I've never heard the accuracy and the use of air that she has being so efficient. It gets to the point where the voice almost sounds like, in parts, a woodwind instrument because of the level of consistency that she has with her airflow. So getting into the analysis, with all the top singers, I always mention about it being a dynamic journey vocally, and we've got a top example of that here. The way that Sohyang starts with a lot of air in her vocal sound. And this is because the dynamics, we're right at the bottom of the mountain here. It's soft and it's got that spoken quality to it, almost a whispering quality to it. And as we then start to progress through the track, she'll start to connect her vocal cords a little bit more bit by bit. And then by the end of the track, we are fully connected and belting out. But even though I say belting, it doesn't really sound like that because of the clarity of the tone. A lot of people will attribute belting to maybe sounding raspy, but here it's totally under control the whole time. So as an example, we're just going to listen to the beginning of the song, and just this one phrase, listen to the amount of air that is in the sound here. And there we have it. So the words, I will try, the vocal cords are hardly connected there at all because there's so much air in the sound. It's very much a, I will try, I will try. It's so much air, obviously a lot better than that, but you can hear the breath in the sound. So those vocal cords are apart, but they are just touching enough to hear the notes. But this is all about the expression that Sohyang's putting into it. I've cued the video right back to the beginning of the song because this is the kind of performance that you could break down second by second, just talking about the technique on show here. But I'm going to play the beginning of the song and then just explain what I think will absolutely fly under everyone's radar who's listening to this because of the ability on show and how Sohyang just delivers the vocal. But let's have a listen. And there we have it. We have already covered an octave of range, but you don't notice. And this is the point. This is why her technique is so pristine, because normally when a vocalist covers an octave in range, I've mentioned this about all the top vocalists having that ability, but a lot of them have to strain to get an octave above where they started. So it'll be in a chorus and it'll be a raspy sound because they're really reaching for that top note. Whereas here, we've already had an octave of range, but it's all in the same sound. And this is where the technique comes in. There's no pressure here. There's no forcing. There's no straining. It's all sounding the same. And this refers back to a point I make all the time about tonal consistency. If you can have the same tone throughout your whole voice, then you have got fantastic technique, because there's always the tendency to change as you get higher up in your range and start to force out notes. But here you can tell that Sohyang has such control of her vocal cords. It doesn't matter where the note is, she can access it with any kind of tone or expression she wants. For reference, the notes that she's already covered in this verse started at C4, and she's just touched on a C5. So that is the octave in range, and I always mention about the C5, the male tenor, high C, the holy grail. But here, obviously being a female vocalist, pretty much as a rule of thumb, you can take a female's vocal as an octave higher than a guy's. I'm also going to demonstrate it on guitar, because sometimes when you're looking at a piano, it's hard to get your head around all of the notes that are being sung, but just the notes within the range that's being pointed out. So we're going to start down at the C4, and I'm going to play through every single note of range that we have in this performance from Sohyang, all the way up to a G5. Actually an A5 from memory. I think that's going to be our top note. So we're starting with our C4. I'm just going to play through all of the notes here. And there we go. So that is our A5, and playing through all of that, that just went on for ages because of the range that we're covering. By the way, the C5 is there. So that's where our octave is covered just in the verse. Of course, Sohyang just makes it seem effortless, just covering that octave. You don't even notice it. But once she gets to that octave, she's got all of this range. And if we're analysing it all the way up to that A, the A5, the A4 is just there. So we're 1, 2, 3. Just 3 notes off a 2-octave vocal in this performance. So it means that you're going to be taken on such a journey emotionally because of the change in pitch in the performance, but also just the delivery, the control, and for the most part, when she's hitting that high G, and this is a G5, she is all over that note. In this performance, she can just hit that note for as long as she wants, put vibrato on it, have a real body in the sound. So it is time to look at vibrato, one of those techniques that I mention all the time as being so important with vocalists. And if you have been watching this channel recently, you'd have seen me looking at a couple of classical singers, slowing down their vibrato, and also showing how exaggerated vibrato is in classical music when compared with more mainstream genres. But here we have the application of vibrato in a more contemporary way. And we are going to listen to it and slow it down. Listen to the frequency as well, the control, the vibrato in how the waves are formed. And when I talk about the waves of vibrato, I'm talking about the frequency, the way that it flows. But let's have a little listen, and we are going to be listening to it at half speed. Hopefully you can hear the waves of going. There's a definite peak and trough to the frequency of vibrato, and it's not random. This is the point, that if you want to get a note to sing, if I went and I was totally random with that sound, it doesn't sound nice because the brain can't organize that. It's not something that is under control. Whereas as soon as you go, and you put an even wave in there, it starts to sound like singing. And here is a great example of perfect frequency and also not covering too much of a pitch to make it more classical sounding and less contemporary, because this is what this kind of singing is all about. Appealing to a large audience with fantastic technique that does come from classical singing and classical study of the voice, but then applying that vibrato to take the classical technique into the mainstream, into the contemporary sound. And that is certainly something that Sohyang does faultlessly. Like I said, there is so much we can point out in this video, but I'm just going to look at exactly the same part of the song again. But now listen out for the dynamic change in the band, because when Sohyang has been singing, it's been quite light. And she's now about to transition into a very connected sound and really belt out some notes. And you'll find on the word part, listen out for this, the way that the band and the composition just takes itself down dynamically, because it's going to make this peak that we're about to hit even more dramatic. Listen out for it and see if you can hear the drop in levels of the whole band on the word part. And there we have it. We have now hit a peak because of the way that the dynamics was taken down before this part of the song. Obviously, it's all about the vocal, because if she couldn't hit the notes like this, it wouldn't seem like as much of a peak, whereas this is just a crazy peak that we've now hit. I want to draw your attention to the cry that Sohyang has in her voice, and it's something that I mentioned again in other videos with top singers, always having a cry in their voice. Here you might miss it, but listen out for it. I will slow it down to a quarter of the speed, so maybe you'll be able to hear the cry in the voice before Sohyang's vocal cords then come together with a little bit more pressure to then give the full-bodied sound that she gets into. But let's just have a listen to the phrase at normal speed. And there we have it. So now we're going to listen at a quarter of the speed. So this is going to sound really weird, but I want you to try and hear the cry, because it is come and gone in a fraction of a second, but it is in there. It's what gives the vocal the expression and the emotion. But let's have a listen. Right there, just before the vocal comes in, those vocal cords connect properly, there's a tiny cry. And I have slowed it down, I have analyzed it. The cry happens on an A5, but that's not the note that she's singing. She's then going down to an E5. I'm just going to play the next vocal phrase because I think it's actually a clearer example of the cry. And here, you'll hear the note going, ah, and she'll ascend to the note, but then she'll cut off that note, just put air through her vocal cords, and then she gets into a cry before those vocal cords come back together fully again. Let's have a listen. There. Hopefully you could hear that. The cry, the note, is a lot higher than the note that she ends up singing. And that is what a cry sounds like in slow motion, a quarter of the speed. You'll notice it like this, but you will not notice it at 100% speed. You'll just hear it and it will connect with you on a deep level. But let's get back into the performance and we'll watch it until the end. And there we have it. That is just an insane performance, and the great thing about it is that as a musician and just as a vocalist, but also every musician and vocalist watching this, that last note, the crescendo, everyone is waiting for that note musically. If you are used to this song, but just watching the whole performance here, if you are a musician, you are waiting for that final note, that final G5, and she just gets straight into it, nails it right between the eyes. But again, you can go through this whole performance and just look at sections where she's hitting an A5 in a light vocal cord coordination, and then she sounds like she's belting the A5. Range-wise, she just has total control, and that is the indication of perfect vocal technique, to be able to access all of your notes throughout your range with minimal strain and sing the top notes in your range as lightly as you can sing the lower notes, and vice versa, just total control across the board. This is one of those performances that I think you need to be strapped in to watch because it's just at a totally different level. But thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!